Um, again, I apologize for the technical issues, and thank you everybody for taking the time to tonight. And what we're going to do is just have a little talk about player development and the American development model, and some of the things that we see as we travel, not over just the United States, but certainly all over the globe. And right now, USA Hockey is kind of considered one of the gold standards for player development, and we're obviously making some really big inroads. There was a tweet that went out today where I think out of the top 10 scorers in the NHL, 7 of them were Americans, which is pretty impressive compared to where we were maybe 25, 30 years ago. So what we're really going to talk about is as parents and as administrators and coaches is really making sure that you really understand the age of the athlete that you're coaching, and understand and embrace the sports science that goes hand in hand with it. And so a big part of the ADM is age appropriateness. And a huge part of the American development model is based off child development science, and really what needs to happen at what point in an athlete's or a young child's physical, mental, cognitive, and emotional development. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that we all make, and certainly I'm guilty of it as well, as I think back to my son in his hockey and baseball and other sports, and just kind of getting a little impatient and trying to what we call speed farm development. And anytime you speed farm, we know that and patience doesn't become a priority. A lot of negative things happen on the backside of that. And the biggest one in our sport is burnout. And what we say is building the foundation for our young players so that we don't have to do a bunch of renovations when they're older. Because if you're doing renovations to athletes, and if it's in certain areas of the foundation, it's really, really difficult. And we'll talk more about that. So know the age of the athletes that you're working with, and understand and embrace the science. And really what the ADM is based off of, if you look at these two graphs, female and male, the line here is the rate of growth for the athletes. The PHV is basically puberty. That's peak height velocity. That's when they're at the peak of their growth. And obviously that dot can slide either direction for the females and males based on each individual athlete. This is an average. And you can see that the female athletes are a little bit earlier than the male athletes. And then we call these the windows of trainability. And so these would be some things that would be really the base or the foundation of what we're trying to make sure we're delivering to our athletes. And so we have coaches that are worried about getting kids in shape and conditioning them. And the sports science would tell you, because of lung capacity, that's a waste of time down here. It's a waste of time in two areas. It's not going to have an impact positively, and the negative impact is certainly taking something that's supposed to be fun and turning it into a full-time job at a young age. And this first window, or this first box, is suppleness, which is basically their athleticism. And that's why there's only really 2 early specialization sports, and that's figure skating and gymnastics, particularly on the female side. And so we would say that if I'm coaching young players, I'm not even trying to make a hockey player. In fact, if I'm trying to make a hockey player, I'm probably going about it the wrong way. I'm just trying to make a really good young athlete, and making sure that fun and building passion for the game is at the top of the pyramid for us. This early speed window, and this is where the Europeans are so far ahead of us, it's frightening. Sweden just spent 2 years on an analytic study on what format and ice size is best for their athletes. So all the way up to age 14, their Bantams will play half a season of half ice hockey, because what they learned through the analytic study is that format is most conducive to player development. At 8U, they will play the entire season 4-on-4 in 1/6 of the rink. That'll be their game format. And why is that? It's because they want conflict, they want touches, they want repetitions, they want kids bumping into each other. They want kids having to problem solve, and they don't want to give kids time and space. They want kids to have to create time and space with their head, their hands, and their feet. And what we do over here in the United States with our young athletes in a lot of sports is we give them time and space and really kind of set our kids up for failure later on when the problem solving and the decision making becomes the priority for the great athletes. And then obviously the skill window here is really a big piece of the development, the golden age of skill development. So now we're focused on touches and repetitions. And what happens, the pressure that a lot of our coaches feel is that, and we would say to you that anytime you step on the ice in a game, we want you to try to win. But we don't want you to take any shortcut to get to the win. We want to be competitive. We want to win. We all want to win championships. We all want to win gold medals. That's just part of our nature, and that's nothing wrong with that. But if I'm recruiting all the top players and putting them on one team, if I'm shortening my bench in key moments of the game, if I'm only playing my best goalie against the best teams, if I'm putting in systems and team play and structure so that my team has more success in games, then really I'm kind of doing the thinking for the athletes. I'm kind of taking away that creativity, and I'm really, at the end of the day, I'm harming my athletes' long-term development. And so really embracing the creativeness and the player development culture is really, really critical for our kids. And I tell parents and coaches all the time, there's a reason why there's no honors classes in elementary school, because what you teach to the brightest kid in your class and the weakest kid in your class is the same. It's the foundation. It's the stuff that's going to lead them well down the road. When it becomes age appropriate, they're going to be separated out by ability. But when I'm coaching a young athlete in any sport, I'm just trying to build the foundation. I'm trying to make sure they have great coordination, balance, agility, that they're having fun, that they're building passion. I'm helping them get better, that they feel safe, they're enjoying their friends, and that it's not a full-time job at the age of 10. And that's really what this whole thing's about. So if there's any questions about this graph or what I've said so far, and at any time, anybody can certainly feel free to unmute themselves and fire away. There's no bad question at all. And it can be about anything. And the other part about this graph that's really important is up until this PHV, we as the adults are kind of in charge of the player development, meaning that we have a big say in it, what they do and how they do it, when they do it. But when a kid gets to about 13, 14, you kind of pass the responsibility for development onto the athlete. And so passion and their want to get better is what really separates the good from the great. Because now the non-fun stuff's going to start. That's getting in shape, that's getting faster, more explosive, and that's getting stronger. Now what I eat, how I rest, my commitment to the sport, my commitment to development, my commitment to getting better, the sacrifices I might need to make that other people might not be willing to make, that's really what's going to allow me to take the next step as an athlete. And so the responsibility gets passed over to the athlete. But what we see a lot of times when they hit this mark, a lot of the eyes have rolled back in their head. Somebody passed that responsibility down here at 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, and they just don't have the drive to really kind of get after it anymore. And they plateau off or they quit the sport and then they're gone. And it's really a sad situation. When we first started the American Development Model, we had 6,000 kids a year quit mite hockey just in the state of Massachusetts alone. Just quit, just get right up and just drop out. And part of it was back in the day, there was a league that had full ice, full body checking, and kids would travel 3 hours to play a game. There was teams in Albany, New York, Portland, Maine, Burlington, Vermont, and they were all over New England. And kids just shriveled up and died off because it was too much too soon. And so what's happened here in a lot of parts of the country, and not just hockey, but in a lot of youth sports, is the competition model, who I play with, who I play against, what's my record, really took over the training model, especially at a time when, the outdoor unstructured play has dried up as well. And And I can tell you that growing up in Minnesota myself, and the generations of people just ahead of me, the 80 Olympic team guys, dear family friend Mark Pavlich passed away, tragic ending to his life. That generation, my generation, the generation before them, it was the outdoor rinks. It was 20 hours a week of street hockey, pond hockey, sandlot baseball, driveway basketball. It was nonstop. And that's kind of gone away. And everybody's focused now on the competition piece. And the other mistake that's made by a lot of the adults is they think that competition is going to drive development. That if I put my child as a 10-year-old in the same locker room, on the same team with the best players, that they're going to get dragged along and they're going to become better. And I can tell you that is one of the great falsenesses of player development. That's speed farming. And your child is better off being the top 3 on a B or C team than the bottom 3 or bottom half of the top team. Because if you're chasing and you're not scoring goals and you're not feeling good about yourself, you're probably not getting better. And I can tell you that 98% of the athletes that you watch in any sport went through some type of struggle or adversity. And big time struggle and adversity. There's exceptions, but those are the few and far between. I can remember when one of my former players, Marty St. Louis, was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame 2 years ago, sitting up in Toronto with his mom and dad and listening to him speak. And the only other player that went in that year was Martin, NHL player was Martin Brodeur. And Marty St. Louis was cut from his 12U team, cut from his 14U team. We took him at the University of Vermont, was never drafted. My uncle was the GM in San Jose at the time. Couldn't get my uncle to draft him in the last round. Nobody would sign him. He had to play in the International Hockey League, and he's one of the greatest players to ever play the game. Marty Brodeur quit hockey at the age of 14 for an entire season. And because he just wasn't very good. And to hear the greatest in our sport, and certainly in other sports, we all know the story about Jordan getting cut from his high school team. It's the struggle is part of the journey. It's how we handle the struggle, and we're trying to win the race to the wrong finish line, and that is trying to develop the best player at 12. And most of the best players that I see at 12, for the most part, I can't find them at 15 and 16 because there was just too much too soon. These are the numbers that really scare us when we see this. We see these numbers and we really get kind of frightened about what's happening. And this wasn't this past season, this was the season before. With 48,000 kids playing hockey in Mass, 24 NHL players. Finland with 39,000, so almost 10,000 fewer, 66 NHL players, and Sweden with 41,000, 103 NHL players. And what's the difference between Finland and Sweden? They don't have leagues until the age of 14. Majority of the kids play within their own little hometown. The entire focus of the coaches at the younger ages is the individual athlete, not the team. They don't coach the team, they coach the individuals. They have a huge commitment to an athletic lifestyle. The kids come to the rink 2-3 times a week, but there's also a 30-minute off-ice session, which I'll show you in a second, and we'll talk more about that. But when we see these numbers, we say, you know what? We got some pretty good coaches. We've got a lot of nice rinks. We got a lot of kids playing hockey. USA Hockey's breaking every record we've ever had in terms of kids signing up to play. Even through the pandemic, our numbers stayed stronger than most other youth sports, which is shocking because we're in indoors, we're in a rink, and there's a lot of issues there through the pandemic. But we know we can do better, and we're working at it, and we are. Those numbers are going to change. You're going to see those numbers as we move through the next 10 years are probably going to double, if not more. Embracing failure, not trying to have your young child be perfect. That understanding that failure is the greatest teacher of all. Learning through mistakes, learning through struggle and adversity. That's a huge part of the journey. And I know as a youth sport dad, that's not easy to do. It's never fun to see your kid struggle or get cut or not make the grade at a certain stage in their development, and it hurts, but it's part of the process, and it's a really important part of the process. And so embracing failure is really critical. And the great coaches I've been around, not only do they embrace it, they actually force it to happen. The great coaches I've been around, their practices are more difficult in the game emotionally and mentally, but it's safe. It's safe. Kids aren't going to, they're not going to get yelled at. They're not going to get punished. They're going to be encouraged to stretch themselves, to get out of their comfort zone, to really work on their weaknesses. So that if they do have the passion when they get older, they have the base to get better and move on. And so this is the difference that I talked about before with us and between us and some of the European countries, with that commitment to the individual athlete's development. So if I'm handed a team of 13 kids, I don't coach if I'm a good teacher, I don't teach the class. I teach the students. I don't teach the top students. I don't teach to the middle students. I don't teach to the bottom students. I teach to the individual students. I try to get my better students to be challenged, and as much as they want or need, I'm going to push them a little bit. I'm going to really work hard with my weaker students so that they feel good and safe and comfortable, but that they're going to work at it and feel good about it. Same thing as a coach. You know, working with the different individual athletes' needs. It's not easy, but it's really important. This is the one that's really been missing for a long time in our sport, and that is, if you give me an athlete in any sport that's playing chess, they're going to have a chance to play for a long time, because most of the players are playing checkers. The people that think the game better, that see the game better, that read the game better, those are the ones that are going to move on. And there's two huge characteristics of high-end athletes in most sports. Their computer's better than most, and their compete level's higher than most. And so if we can attack those two things, or make sure we protect those two things and encourage those two aspects of player development, then we're probably going to do a pretty good job of making some pretty good players. So what's happening around the country is, this is a group of peewees out in Michigan. One of my coworkers with his son's organization. Once a month, they play 4-on-4 half ice with a board system and a netting system, but they practice and train like this all the time. Because what we learned through the pond and what I learned from the great coaches is, I'm not going to make a player better by telling him what to do. I'm going to make a player better by putting them in the environment and culture that forces them to get to experience the experience in the game within the practice is going to be the teacher. It's just like driver's ed. It's just like learning how to ride a bike, right? We can tell kids all the time what to do, but they have to experience it. They have to fail. They have to learn through trial and error. And that's all part of the process. And it's really important in youth sport. This is what I was talking about before, a commitment to a quality off-ice program, the athleticism piece. And this is a group of 14-year-olds that we worked with over in Finland in their national camp 2 winters ago. And then I spent a week up in Romanecki the year before COVID. This is a group of 10-year-olds in the lobby of their rink 3 times a week, 35 minutes before every practice. And I just want you to watch these 10-year-olds. It's just simple. They had 4 stations. They had body, agility, coordination, balance, footwork. They're doing tumbling over here on an old gray mat that was pretty disgusting. And then at the other end of the lobby, they're doing some other things with the upper body stuff and some core stuff. But just look at the rhythm of the kids and the agility and coordination and the change of direction, which we know is at the base of all your skating. And so to make a great skater, is it just the skating, or is it the ability to move with rhythm and with confidence and all that other stuff? So for us, this is the base. And then these 14-year-olds, because the Finns understand sports science, they're delivering core body strength, and they're delivering hand-eye coordination while they're moving. It's simple but ingenious, and our kids aren't getting a lot of this at all. If you look at your child's PE schedule, we used to get this back when, I'm an old fart, we used to get this back in the old presidential fitness testing in school. We had PE an hour a day, plus probably another hour of recess or after school activity. You're lucky if your kid gets an hour of PE a week. Maybe a little bit more in some other schools, but that's what's dried up probably the most in our academic setting in schools, which is really a shame, because that was a big base of a lot of the older athletes' athleticism, because they were being asked to do things that they probably weren't being asked to do in their daily lives in youth sport. And so when we test some of our best players, these are really good 14 and 16U players that'll play, and some of these kids are playing in college hockey right now. But you ask yourself, are they going to reach their full potential if their base of athleticism is that poor? And we would say no, they're deficient. Their foundation is not very strong, and it's going to come back to hurt them at some point, because they just don't do it. They're not asked to do it. This is simple cartwheels and tumbling, and they're highly, highly, highly deficient, because a lot of the focus is on everything that happens on the ice. And then we would say to you, as coaches in particular, if I'm going to deliver, we have a lot of coaches that run their 20 minutes of edge work and power skating. We would say to you that there's 5 elements to almost everything you do in practice. Fun is number 1 element. 2 is constant decision making. 3 is game-like. 4 is touches and repetitions. And 5 is challenging. And we would say everything you do in practice needs to have those 5 elements. So when we talk about edge work, stops and starts, change of direction, agility, coordination, and balance, simple box tag, you got to get 2 feet in and 2 feet out before the 2 players in the middle or the 1 player in the middle can tag you. And so the kids don't know. I call it Flintstone vitamins. They have no idea that they're doing edge work, because they're just trying to get in and out of the box without getting tagged. But it forces them to make a read. It forces them to have spatial awareness. It forces them to compete. It raises the temperature, the pace, and the intensity, and the focus and the drive goes way up because they're having fun. And player development goes that much faster. And the change in athletes when this type of training is committed to is a game changer. And I tell coaches all the time, like I said before, I spent about 20 hours a week as a kid growing up on the outdoor rinks in Minnesota when it was not too warm. We never went there and did power skating. We never went there and did edge work. If we lost the puck in the snowbank, we figured out a tape ball or an ice chunk or something, or we went home, because we went there to play. And you got to have that mindset with young athletes. It's got to be fun. Fun's got to be at the base of everything you do. And if it's not, development really gets hampered big time. So that's kind of a real quick little spiel. That's my email address. That's my cell phone number. And if you don't want to ask a question here, you're more than welcome to email me or call me. I'm the regional man. I get paid. My salary is paid for by the NHL. The NHL is completely committed to this. I'm the liaison to college hockey. For USA Hockey, I coached Division I college hockey for 20 years. I've coached 8 of our national teams. Had the opportunity to coach with and against the best players in our game. So this stuff we're talking about isn't just something that we just kind of made up. This is years and years and years of experience and research and thought that's gone into this program. And I have personally spoken to Major League Baseball, U.S. lacrosse, U.S. soccer, U.S. skiing, U.S. swimming and diving, U.S. volleyball, Canada baseball, Hockey Canada, Australian rugby's football, New Zealand football. It's not called rugby, but they have a different name for it. and everybody's looking at what they're doing, and they're making big changes to their sport. US 10, I mean, basically every youth sport now has an ADM. US football, they've all adopted some of these principles, and it's because it's kind of common sense in a lot of ways. So that's kind of a quick overview of what we're trying to get people to kind of step back and think about and digest and hopefully implement, because we know that if more people are doing this, we're going to have more, those numbers I showed you before are going to grow. I will say that if you're going to do something really well, it's not easy, and there's going to be people that are going to punch holes in it. There's going to be people that are going to push back because it's change. And so it makes it more difficult, but it's well worth it. So I'll open it up to any questions or comments or thoughts.
I got a question.
There you go.
So how you doing, Roger? Mark Usaconis. I've talked to you a few times in the past. You probably don't remember because you do a lot of these. Hopefully Kevin Zena and Chris May don't have the controls, because they're probably going to mute me, knowing those guys. But so mine's a little bit more specific, so I apologize. I've got some older kids. I've got one going to U16 next year, and I got one who's finishing second year Pee Wee, going to start Bantams.
Yep.
So the way the U16 program that he's with, it's much more full ice. He's on the high school team, and really a lot of that's just prep for high school. So just talking about, the ADM model, stuff like that, like what are they really looking to see to get across at that level? We don't got 60 kids on the ice. It's, 15 to 18 with two goalies. We're usually breaking up D on one end, forwards on the other, working on specific things, then we'll get them together. Like, what are some things that we could talk about there? And then the other question is my Pee Wee that's going to start Bantams and introducing to checking. How does the ADM really want us to talk to that about, they're all excited to hit. Everyone wants the highlight reel, ESPN, the big hit. To be honest with you, I think the checking at this age group is awful. Everyone, so many kids have got their heads down. There's a lot of just open ice hits, a lot of bad hits. Just what are some of the things you're seeing with USA Hockey that can help me kind of get the message across that there's two different age groups?
We want body contact and body checking to start the first day kids start hockey.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest mistake is coaches don't do any of it in practice. And then they say at 14U, here you go check.
Mm-hmm.
But ask our Pee Wee coaches that allow full body checking in every practice. Do it. It's just like driver's ed. It's, okay. You can't just say, go do it. Because there's a lot of factors that come into play. It's angling. It's your footwork. It's where your stick's located. It's steering. It's taking away space. It's your reads. It's your routes. There's so much that comes in the checking. Everybody thinks it's the actual hit. And I will tell you that if you watch, and it's a little disappointing what's going on with the NHL right now. And I think part of it's just because of the way the schedule's set up. Those guys are getting sick of seeing each other 4 or 5, 6 times. And there's getting some animosities being, built up. But I also think that the referees have kind of let some things go as of late. And we've had discussions about it ourselves, and hopefully we'll see some changes here soon. But we would say to you that if you really look at the great, like to me, the best checker on the Bruins is Bergeron.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't blow people up. But he uses his body so well, he uses his stick so well, he wins pucks. He wins space. And that's why he's considered one of the best players in the league, because he can do everything, but he's really good at using his body properly. And everybody thinks of checking as a hit. Checking is not a hit. And in fact, most of your top players in the league, they don't finish their checks very often unless the puck's still there, or unless they're trying to send a message, which at the NHL level is completely different than youth hockey, right? And we would say to you to finish your check takes yourself out of the play. And at the next level, it's all about numbers. Can I get back in and support defensively and offensively? So checking piece is really, really, really critical, and it's a missing piece for a lot of our coaches. And we've made a really strong push on that for the last 3 or 4 years, and we'll continue to do that. The first part of your question, I don't know how youth coaches run a practice with 15, 16 kids. I had 30 plus guys my size every practice, and those guys were gassed because I want quality. I want my practice to be more intense and more difficult in the game. I think the beauty of a guy like Belichick is if you talk to people, his practices aren't physically demanding because he's trying to manage that physical output that you have to, you know, the strain of an NFL season, but emotionally and mentally extremely demanding because he's forcing failure, you know, Monday through Saturday so that it doesn't happen on Sunday. And so we tend to do a lot of things in open space, around cones, around circles, without any conflict. And we talk about our players' heads not being up. Well, there's a simple way to have your players' heads get up. Put them in conflict. Like if I'm going to learn my head's going to, it's because I'm going to crash into somebody. But we put kids on 200 by 85, starting at the age of some places 5 or 6 years old. All there is space. They never have to pick their head up because it's one move. They hit the burners and they're gone for a breakaway. It's just not hockey. And so we kind of set our kids up for failure. And I always tell coaches, who's the problem? Is it the coach or the athlete? When you set up a solemn course with cones, where are you forcing the kid's head to be? Down. And then Saturday, you're telling him to pick his head up. And the kid should just turn around to the coach and say, hey, then don't make me go around these cones that are on the ice. Like you're forcing my head, you're training me to do the exact opposite of what you want me to do. And so, you know, if I were to show you what the Swedes and the Finns are doing, it's a ton of small spatial with big numbers. It's 30 kids in one zone with each having a puck. Don't crash. Pick your head up. Find space. Maneuver. Problem solve. Find the lane. Find the seam. Find the open space. And we don't do that over here enough. And but that's what we had on the pond. We went out on the pond without helmets, with a hat on. We never played a full. If there was a full ice game in an outdoor rink, it was probably 10 on 10 or 12 on 12. We were not going to go 200 by 85 with 10 guys, 5 on 5. We just weren't going to do that. And so I have a really good friend who's the head coach who was the head coach at Brown University in soccer when I was there, and now he's the head coach at Clemson. I did a webinar with him, and I asked him. I said, Mike, how often do you have one of the top Division I men's soccer programs in the country? How many times do you do a full field drill? He says, we can't. We never would do a full field drill. It's insanity to think about that. I'm going to have my guy go that far for a shot. I want him to go 2 feet and take a shot. I want him to go 5 feet and take a shot. I want him to go 3 feet and have to make a decision. Am I going to pass or am I going to make a move? I don't want him to have to go half the field before that happens, because I'm trying to manage their physical output for their mental input and their decision-making input. And that's the beauty of small spaces. That's why the Swedes are changing their complete game format. So for your 16-year-olds, you know what? Even if they hand you a full sheet of ice with 15 kids, I might do one full ice drill, but I'm gonna back them down and I'm gonna get them in conflict in game-like situations. Because today, the modern game at the higher level, I can show you clip after clip. I have a bunch of them, clip after clip after clip of 10 guys in the NHL on 1/6 of the rink. It's about numbers. When I played and I was a left defenseman, if the puck was in the right corner, I wasn't allowed to go in that corner. I was going to stay on the far post. I was going to guard the post just in case the post ever scored. Now, if my D partner's in a battle and their second guy gets in, like tonight or last night against the Islanders, or whenever that last game was, Monday night, I can't remember when the last game was. I got to get in there and help because I don't want to get my teammate to get outnumbered. I got to get numbers around the puck. So it's about swarming. It's about outnumbering. It's not about position play. Position play is how do we win the puck back or how do we continue to possess it? It's not stand at the hash mark, the far post, the blue line. It's about reads and routes. And we got to put kids in those situations more and more often because they're not doing it on the pond or in the street. So 2 really, really good questions.
Thank you.
Excellent questions. I hope I answered them.
No, you did. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Anybody else?
Hi, this is Francine. My son is in he's on the AAA team. This is only his 3rd year playing, but he loves it, breathes it, eats it, all about hockey. I already signed up for deck hockey. But he's going to midgets next season. Do you have any advice for us?
In terms of what?
Just like this summer, he normally goes to clinics, Greg Carter, and
Yeah.
all different clinics all summer, focusing on it. But I didn't know.
He's going to be 16.
No, he's 14. He's going to be 15.
Going to be 15, but he aged out of Bantams.
Yes.
Okay, so he's an 05.
He's 06.
06.
October. Yep.
Okay. Oh, he's got the bad birthday. Okay.
Yes.
So I would say to you that at his age, at what he, my suggestion to you is the biggest mistake that's made is the whole off ice piece. Where you can make the biggest impact at that stage, if you go back to that graph I shared, is on their getting stronger, more explosive. And you think about a guy like Tom Brady. Why is he able to play so much longer? He committed himself to a quality training program early on. He extended his career. He's been able to maintain his athleticism for a very long time because he's committed to all the stuff that needs to happen away from the stadium. And that's what, you think about a guy like Tiger Woods, right? Tiger Woods changed golf, not because he was so good, but because he was the first golfer that looked like a tight end. Like physically, he was a machine, and he trained at it. He got his reps in, he played, but he trained. Like he was strong, he was explosive. And now you look at the guys on the pro golf. He changed golf because now they all look like they're unbelievably conditioned, strong athletes. They're all into that now. And so that changed the game. I mean, in my generation, Gretzky had a comment once that I'll never lift a weight because I've never seen a barbell score a goal. Well, I got to help the Rangers run training camp when Gretzky was there because I was the associate head coach at the University of Vermont, and they had training camp up in Burlington. And Gretzky changed his tune later in his career because he wanted to extend it. You have no idea what's going on behind the scenes with these athletes. I mean, it's just amazing at how they eat and how hard they train. But the biggest mistake that's made by a lot of our young athletes is they think that playing 60, 70 games, playing summer leagues is going to help them become better players. And they don't commit to a 4-day, 5-day a week, really good training program away from the rink. That's the game changer. Now, you need to find somebody that can assess your son and where he's at physically and skeletally. So you don't want to be pushing weight if he's not ready for it. But if his passion is to try to play at the next level, what's going to separate him from the rest of the group, and I would say still go be involved in some hockey stuff for sure, but that 4 or 5 days a week in a weight room with somebody that knows what they're doing, that's going to be the big game changer for him.
Okay, that sounds good. I mean, this is only his 3rd year playing hockey. He had 1 year of Pee Wee, and then he was Bantam A last season, and just pushed and pushed and worked so hard and made, the AAA team this year. And then he was taken out in December with a broken clavicle in a game. So he sat out for 11 weeks and, went to every game, practices, just, stayed committed to the team and is back on the ice in games now. And he really wants to keep going. And I just wanted to know if there was a good path we should keep him motivated and keep going.
There's no secret pill. There's no secret strategy. The guys that I've been around and the girls that I've been around that have taken that next step are the ones that are truly committed, meaning that they're willing to really kind of get after it when everybody else wants to go to the beach and they're tired. And I would say at your son's age, if that's his goal, that's what he's got to do. He's got to separate himself from the pack with his training regimen. It goes back to the slide I showed you with the competition versus the training. You don't get better by playing game. Like if you really took a stopwatch and you watched your kids play during a game, and you saw, if you took the time they're sitting in a car, time they're in the locker room getting dressed, time in the locker room getting undressed, time in the car going home from the game, and then you added that, or you subtracted that from the amount of time they're actually active on the ice, depending on the roster size and what happened in the game. If we ran piano lessons like that, we'd be out of business in a week, because your kid would be sitting at the piano for 15 minutes for about a 2 or 3 hour time frame. And you'd be furious as a parent, because you'd be like, how's my kid going to get better at the piano if they're only doing 15 minutes, but we committed to 3 hours? But you think about it, if there's 15 kids on the team and the periods are 15 minutes, they're out there every third shift. That's 15 minutes of activity if there's no penalties and every kid stays a minute shift. It's dysfunctional. And that's why everybody gets so caught up in the games. And listen, we want you to play games, we want you to have fun, but think about all the other stuff that needs to go into place for your kids to get better, if that's what their ultimate goal is. If you just want to play the sport, there's nothing wrong with that. But if truly down deep you want to try to play at the next level, that's a whole nother conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Great question.
Any other questions for Roger before we sign off? All right. Well, really quickly before we log off, Natalie helped me pull the winner of the $150 Pure Hockey gift card, and that's going to go to Don Linnell. So Don, I will email you tomorrow with the information for the gift card. Congratulations. And with that, Roger, thank you so much for joining tonight. Definitely means a lot to the program. And if anybody has questions after, they can either come through me, email Roger directly. But with that, everybody, I hope you have a good night.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Roger.
Thanks, everybody. Reach out if you have questions.
Thanks, Roger. Good man.
Take care.
Thanks, Roger.